Okay, so what is going on at Chelsea? These past 2 weeks, there's been a lot of change in Chelsea regarding their ownership, regarding Roman Abramovich, and a lot of those sanctions that have been placed on him. So what we're going to do over the next 20 minutes is dive a little deeper into that situation. Before we do start that off, I do think it is important to highlight that in relation to what is actually going on in Ukraine, this is a non-issue. This is talks about money, about soccer, about football, which honestly, all those problems pale in comparison to what is going on over in Ukraine. That being said, this is a soccer podcast, so we are going to talk about soccer here. Start off the timeline, just kind of get us up to speed.
1990, the Soviet Union collapsed.
Yeah, well, I won't go that far, but I'll start at 2.5 weeks ago.
Right.
Well, this is kind of when sanctions were being rumored, and Abramovich's connections to Putin were being closer or more closely inspected, and then ultimately Abramovich decided to put up the club for sale about 2 weeks ago, with an initial valuation of £3 billion, which is $3.94. That's just right off the top.
Nice.
And when this decision came out to put the club up for sale, Abramovich came out and said, "Okay, I'm not asking for any of these loans back. Loans worth about 1.5 billion pounds." He said, "I'm not asking for that back." He said, "The money from the sale, or the excess money from the sale, will go towards the victims of the war in Ukraine." He did not specify which victims of the war, which is kind of important to point out, whether which side that money will actually go to. And then ultimately last week, sanctions were put on him. All of
His
assets were frozen. And with him owning 100% of Chelsea, all of Chelsea was frozen pretty much. Mm-hmm. So this is obviously a huge deal. Chelsea kind of got some wiggle room. The UK gave them a license, which kind of lets them maintain their day-to-day operations, lets them pay the staff, lets them pay the players. And then I think they also got $20,000 or £20,000, I'm assuming, per away game.
Right. Which is not, it's about a fifth as much as they usually pay for. So they're going to be, instead of taking their private jets, they're going to be on
buses,
the bus lines.
Carpools, things like that.
Right. It was for Chelsea's sake, thankful that before this all happened, they did already purchase all those tickets for the Lille game. But since then, Kai Havertz has said he'll pay for the operations.
Yeah, so no problem.
Right, no problem. Could not be me. I think some kind of, just to get us up to current date, now basically the Sharks are circling Chelsea. People who want to buy the club, different parties involved. I think it's rumored almost 200 of them are interested. 200 parties are interested, and all the bids have to be in by March 18th, which is this Friday when this episode is coming out. So by that point, the kind of door will be closed, and we might hear a little or some more development on that end.
Right.
And kind of while all of this was been going on, Chelsea have been playing pretty well. They're 3 wins during this time period over Newcastle, Norwich, and Lille today. So it's kind of funny that these are all happening in tandem, where Chelsea is also kind of picking up some form while all this distress is going on. And I have a list of all the players that are. They have Jorginho, Pulisic, Rudiger, Lukaku, Azpilicueta, Christensen, Marcus Alonso, and Thomas Tuchel, all with kind of semi-serious rumors to be leaving in the summer with all these situations going on.
Yeah.
Wow.
So in short, it's a little bit of a train wreck. But I think Max will run us through some of these sharks that are circling, and you can kind of tell us, who are these parties involved? Because honestly, I haven't been able to look into that either too much. So I'm interested to see.
So you mentioned over 200 groups expressed interest, but really there's maybe 5 to 10 credible offers. Obviously, Conor McGregor wanted to buy Chelsea.
That was just a tweet.
That's not going to happen. We're going to submit a bid probably after this, try to buy Chelsea.
Well, yeah, I mean, eventually the valuation's going to keep going down. It's going to be worth $0. I'm submitting $4.
But yeah, so the UK government, they've said the license conditions that as written today, a sale in general is not allowed. But if a buyer emerges, which, they're holding talks right now, the UK government would be in charge of running everything. And so the bank that Abramovich has talked to is called the Rain Group, and that's a U.S. bank, and they're handling the whole transaction. So yeah, they gave bidders until Friday to put in their bids, and people are looking at wage bills, any debt Chelsea has right now.
It's interesting with the debt because obviously they have so much debt to Abramovich. So I'm interested to see if his statement is actually fact, or if he's like, oh, I see you're coming in with a bid of $3 billion. Well, 1.5 of that Chelsea owes me.
Well, it's interesting too, and I couldn't find anything about this, but it might not be up to Abramovich to choose who he wants to sell it to. It might be up to the UK government. Someone submits a bid. If Roman doesn't want to sell it to them, he might not have a say.
Honestly, at that point, that makes more sense.
And so yeah, he does want £3 billion. He hasn't gotten anything up in that range yet, and it's unlikely he will unless there's an auction going on. But some of the big names, I think a big one and maybe the favorite now is British billionaire Nick Candy, season ticket holder for Chelsea. Agent, right? Yeah, real estate. And he promised if he gets the sale, he's going to give the fans a seat on the board. So a fan representative, a seat on the board, which is interesting. Another one, Saudi media. It's a Saudi consortium. And for those of you that don't know what a consortium is, it's basically just a group of people or businesses that kind of pool their resources together. Obviously, one billionaire might not want to dish out $3 billion for a team, but maybe 3 or 4 of them would. And so the Saudi media group has submitted a $2.7 billion pound.
At that point, it's close enough, right?
Yeah, that's close. And some of the things that they want to talk about is locking down Aspi and Rudiger, fixing up and renovating Stamford Bridge. It's the 9th biggest stadium, 40,000 people.
I think that's what Nick Candy said as well. He's, kind of wants to, one of his first things to do is to completely redo the stadium, which makes sense. I think Abramovich was planning to do that a while ago, I think before he had visa problems. So didn't go through with it. But that would make sense, and that would drastically increase their day-to-day revenue, or I guess week-to-week revenue.
Yep, exactly. And then there's another Swiss group. So one of them, Todd Boehly, is actually the owner of the LA Dodgers, part owner of the Lakers. They submitted an offer in the range of £2 billion. Woody Johnson, the owner of the New York Jets, is interested. So a lot of other sports team owners, and a lot of Americans, mostly American bidders, I would say, for the most part.
Yeah, I mean, I just hearing that list of names, I don't really know, I don't know really that much about Nick Candy or what how he got his money, or honestly if he can afford it, because compared to a Saudi consortium, they probably have a lot more money than he does. So I don't, I'm interested to see kind of if he can actually come up with the money to pay for that. I would say off the bat that I don't want an American owner. You look at Manchester United and how they just try to pump every cent out of the club that they can. Tom Ricketts was rumored as well.
That's the next one. Yeah. Tom Ricketts and Ken Griffin, the hedge fund billionaire. He's actually the richest person in Illinois. He is the CEO and owner of Citadel, and they're going in and submitting a bid. I think that was rumored today.
Which is... for the last 5 years, the Ricketts, who own the Cubs, have been saying that they don't have enough money to put that much money back into the club. They're a little
Stingy.
A little stingy. Their pockets are a little short right now. And then all of a sudden they have $3 billion to bid on Chelsea. So if you are a Chelsea fan, you do not want the Ricketts in charge of your club because they're really just...
They're out for profit.
They did bring the Cubs their first championship in 108 years, but then they are just milking every little ounce of profit they can from that win.
Yeah, and you think like Abramovich, one of the reasons he was so good to Chelsea is because, he was just there kind of for fun. He wasn't looking to make money off of it, so he could just buy Lukaku on a whim.
Yeah.
Which, some of these American owners would likely not do.
Yes. And Chelsea has relied on that. And I think they've probably relied on their owner more than anyone else has in the Prem, honestly. And Roman is willing to, at times, take a loss just because he loves the club. And I think that's going to be very difficult to find with a lot of these potential buyers. But yeah, I mean, the Ricketts thing is interesting because after the Cubs won the championship, they fixed up parts of the stadium. They bought out the whole basically neighborhood, and renovated everything, brought in new businesses, really just trying to get the profits up. And it's hard because you're going to have a different style owner. You're either going to have the person that's very business focused, or you're going to have someone that just loves football or soccer.
Well, that's why I'd hope if Nick Candy, if he was a genuine fan, that would make it more fun.
Yeah.
Because he would more want it, or he would want it to do well.
Right. You go to the Cubs games now, and instead they turn concession stands into season ticket holder only areas where it's kind of this elite dining area. So it's pretty much centered on profit and building up this commercial revenue. It's not built on the regular fan and their experience.
Yeah. I mean, that was one of the things I wanted to ask you guys, if I guess you guys answered, but if you would want someone that's a fan of the club and genuinely cared, or if you would want someone else that maybe loves the club or likes the club, but allows someone else to really take care of the club, day-to-day sporting events.
Yeah, I mean, I think the first option 110%, because them being a fan doesn't mean that they're going to assume responsibility for everything.
Right.
Abramovich was, seemingly a fan or wanted the club to kind of do well sporting wise, but Marina ran most of the, business deals and whatnot. Petr Cech, obviously, I don't even know what his role is these days, but has a big role in kind of Chelsea's overarching strategy. So I don't think that being a fan necessarily means that they're running all the operations, but I do or would like to think that it means that they have the club's best interest at heart.
Yeah.
One thing I do want to talk about briefly is that Saudi media group. I think, it's kind of murky whether it's a private organization or if it's, tied into the government. Correct. Which I feel if it is, and if they can't, find a solid answer, it seems ridiculous to me that Chelsea or the UK at this point would accept a bid from them, because, if they're sanctioning Abramovich for wrongdoings in Ukraine, why would they support, or why would they give money to a Saudi-backed group, or Saudi government-backed group, not to a non-private group? Seems kind of, I don't know what I can't think of. Hypocritical. Yeah, it doesn't seem, it's not consistent.
Yeah, and that is something that they're talking about right now, but we'll see, I guess. So
yeah,
I mean, it's a quick turnaround. I mean, assets frozen within the last 2 weeks, and now he has to sell it, and there's probably going to be a new Chelsea owner by the end of this month, officially. So,
well, where does that bring us, Tom?
I want to kind of give a lay of the land of what each kind of type of owner will bring to Chelsea, and give a little examples. So currently the American owners in the Premier League are Manchester United and Liverpool. Man U is a perfect example of what probably will happen with the Glazer family. They took over in 2005, and they came in, and pretty much their sole goal was to increase revenues. They have said on tape that on-field performance doesn't matter that much. They really care about increasing the revenue of the club and bringing them to that level. And so since they joined in 2005, they've increased the commercial revenue by like 4 times. They've
buying Cristiano Ronaldo last summer.
Yeah, like things to. Their goal wasn't to put the best players on the pitch, best team on the pitch. Their goal was to sell jerseys and sell tickets, and they've done that very well. Manchester United currently still have the highest revenue in the Premier League, only eclipsed by City last year because of lower match day revenues from COVID. But American owners don't really have the skin in the game as like a fan of the Premier League, and they're really in it as a investment to make profit, which soccer in general, football clubs in general, don't make that much profit. So to do that, you have to pretty much skim a lot of profits that are, if for teams like Chelsea, are going straight to players.
Yeah.
A little background on how Chelsea became Chelsea is in 2003, Abramovich bought Chelsea, and before the times of financial fair play, there was no rules. So Abramovich pumped 1.5 billion pounds into the club. And when the fair play regulations came around, they had to they were like, we got to figure out a strategy. So they just pumped money into the youth academy, created the Cobham, incredible youth academy, but that pumps out a lot of great players that they sell for profits like Guehi, Tomori, players that you see once a year for 30 million, and keeps their financial fair play regulations break even, and they just barely skim by every single year. And that was their strategy for years and years. If a owner like an American owner comes, that's going to change. You're going to see Chelsea look a lot more like Tottenham or Arsenal, where they're not going out and buying big players because these owners are not going to be willing to take losses of basically 10 million on average each year. They're going to want to make some profit. You're going to see these owners put money into the stadium to increase match day revenues, and they're not going to put money into the players on the field as much. If the media group buys the team, it's going to be more of the same, pretty much.
Man City.
It's essentially Man City
2.0.
version 2, yes. And I think somewhere in between is it's sort of like Liverpool, where even though they are American owners, they still reinvest in the club. They didn't have all that. When the Glazers took over, they went into crazy debt to buy the club, and that debt was on Manchester United to pay. So that's also an interesting thing to look out for. Is an American buyer going to have to go into debt to buy the club? And in that sense, they're going to have to pay off that debt through sales, through the money that would be going to players. So it's kind of just two sides of the coin there.
Yeah, I mean, I think either way, it's going to be very interesting to see, well, obviously, who this new owner will be, because, one way or another, there will be a new owner, most likely before the end of the month. But I think it'll be very interesting to see what happens over the summer, because it could, unlikely, but it could, kind of be consistent with what we've seen. But the more likely option is either that it's going to be, an uber rich person who just, buys a lot of players, or we're going to see like a mass exodus of all those players I listed earlier. And it's going to be a completely new Chelsea team. And I mean, thankfully Chelsea do have some reserves, but, we can't replace the whole team. Yeah. So we're going to have to rely on players like Conor Gallagher and Emerson Palmieri.
Danny Drinkwater.
Yeah.
Well, as a player,
please no.
I mean, as a player, there's so much uncertainty. Would you leave? Like, if this is all going on? I mean, it depends on your loyalty.
Yeah.
I'm Christensen, yeah.
You're going to Barcelona.
Yeah.
If you have
I would get out of this situation.
Yeah.
I wouldn't want to be involved with that. I think, my biggest hope for this whole thing is that Tuchel does not leave. Because I do think that first of all, he's handled this situation unbelievably well. Mm-hmm. As a coach, with all this noise going on in the background, he's been able to save face, and he's been able to be kind of very generous with what he's saying. He's saying, okay, no matter what happens, like, I'm driving the bus. Like, we're getting to the games. We're going to make it work. Like, I am here for Chelsea, which, you know, I love to see as a fan. And so that's part of the reason why I want him to stay. The second half of that is, you know, he's a phenomenal coach. He brought us to Champions League last year. And my biggest hope is that he doesn't leave with a ownership swap. You know, I think as of right now, the bookmakers have him as the third most likely manager to leave. But hopefully that is not the case.
Yeah, I mean, it's
That's
tough
only
when,
odds.
I mean, we were talking about this before. It's tough because there are so many head coaching jobs and managerial positions that are going to be open. Possibly PSG, United. What else do we talk about?
I mean, there could be a carousel.
Juve.
Like if
Juve. I mean, like
Ten Hag goes somewhere. Then,
yeah, Ten Hag.
That's
but
not, I think, what is going to happen.
Yeah.
We have a lot of coaches up in the air. But, yeah, hopefully he stays. You know, by the time you all are hearing this, a new manager could have already been announced. That's how fast things are changing.